All right, and welcome here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on WakeUpCallDT.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT. Proud to be here with you, hanging out with you inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, having some fun here as we always do every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It is a Wednesday show, which means that we have a lot of great stuff coming up here that you're used to having on your Wednesdays, your midweek Blitz, as well as our fantasy football power hour, and very much looking forward to all the great stuff that'll be coming up here where sports meets life on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. And like I said, inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, Cafe Kubal with 5 locations in our community inside of Golisano's Children's Hospital, as well as 3501 James Street, 401 South Salina Street, as well as 324 West Water Street and 208 North Townsend Street. And you can go there today. Perfect day to get it. I'll be going over there myself and bringing one of my buddies to get his favorites, as well as I will be going out there and getting my pumpkin spiced chai. You can have my DT special however you like it. I like to have it with almond milk. You can have it however you want it today. Make sure you go out and get that and all of your favorites at Cafe Kubal. We appreciate everybody that's gone out there and done so. Like I said, on a Wednesday, 2 awesome pieces. We separated into 2 videos here on Facebook Live, and so the first one will be featuring Julian Wiggum, and that is inside of the midweek Blitz, where Julian and I, Syracuse Orange football alum Julian Wiggum, will be talking about Syracuse at Louisville, as well as the world of college football coming off a bye week, and so much more here where sports meets life. And then in hour number 2, we will hop into my conversation with Mr. Mike Sofka of Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com for the Fantasy Football Power Hour, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub for Week 11 in the NFL. With that being said, inside of MonPazPopcorn.com's What's Poppin', we start with Julian Wiggum. Julian, how are we doing today, brother?
Doing well. Can't complain. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. It snowed outside. You and I know that I'll leave a place unnamed, but I got some food last night, and I told you, man. I was like, it's like going back to an ex, bro. I mean, that's what it really feels like. It's like, man, if I go back to her this time, she gonna be all right. She wasn't all right, Julian. She done scared me, made me feel unsafe. You know what I mean? Like, this food was not what the doctor ordered, and I'm not happy about it. I housed it. I ate it all. I went to bed. My heart was beating fast, and I went to bed at like 4 o'clock in the morning, bro. So this is not ideal, but I'm not going to be going back to that treacherous place that we won't talk about.
Look, man, sometimes you look at it like, you know what, I know this is gonna be bad for me, but it's delicious, and you gotta weigh the consequences sometimes. Just go ahead with it, man. And as long as the moment, and you're saying, this is good enough, you find a way to tolerate it, right?
It makes me think of that Chappelle skit where my favorite character, Tyrone Biggums, and when he slams his hand on the table, he's like, you know what dog food tastes like? Do you? It tastes just like it smells. Delicious. Like, that's how I felt last night. I was like, man, this stuff tastes real good. But then after the fact, and my dog was passed out. She's like, man, I'm sleeping. I'm enjoying life. But my heart was just like beating, man. And I was not having it. My body was like, dude, you know what you did to us. It's kind of like when you have to put gas in your car to make it run, and you just put like Hawaiian Punch in there instead. Like, that's exactly how I felt last night. So, bear with me this morning if I'm struggling here, I mean, sometimes, I kind of wish that Julian was here, because I feel like my cousin Vinny's going to pick me up here, make me wave in the studio and all that stuff. So, you're missed up here, Julian. But how's the weather down in Florida? As I woke up this morning and looked outside, and I saw that there was not much, but there's snow on the ground. It looks like a little frosted cookie outside. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I missed that. Florida is typical Florida, 75 degrees and sunny. So, yeah, man, you gotta take a vacation when you can, because I went outside, took a walk today. Caught the breeze for half a second. That's the thing. Like, I'm happy that I'm not happy that you're enjoying the snow, but I'm happy you brought up the snow, because I'm like, man, I don't miss that at all. So I took my walk this morning Because I'm like, I don't know what it is, but like Syracuse scarred me in a way where like sometimes I'll have a dream and just wake up in like the middle of the winter or something, and it's just like blistering cold, and then I wake up out of my night sweats like, oh, the sun's out. Yeah, so like so I'm trying to enjoy this weather as best I can. I'm headed back to New York pretty soon, so I know it's going to be cold and wintry and whatnot. So just making the most of this weather, like I said, man. But Florida, you can't get enough of it, right?
Yeah, man, it's pretty crazy. So I want to discuss something with you here this morning before we get into anything else. For those of you that follow us on social media and follow Wake Up Call on Twitter at CallDT, that's CALLDT. All I put yesterday on Twitter was Julian Wiggum, you wildin' out. That's all I wrote. Now, the reason why I wrote it, for those of you awesome people that have been, devout to, listening to the show and hanging out with us here and all that good stuff, the conversation that I had with Kyle Knapp yesterday, and I want to give you a chance at a rebuttal. He said that you used to justify, like, all the food you ate. You'd be like, no, man, you don't understand. Like, I got to eat this food, you know what I mean? Like, I got to have this ice cream because, it does something for my body, it helps me with like my carb intake or whatever it may be. But he was telling me how you're like, no, man, these French fries, like, you don't understand it. If I put this syrup on this ice cream, it's like it's supposed to do this to me and whatever. And so I want to give you a chance at a rebuttal. And so I open the floor to your thoughts. As you heard Kyle Knapp talk about, I said, tell me something about Julian that Julian wouldn't want anybody to know. And he said he always found justification for what he ate and how much he ate. So I'm going to give you a chance to rebuttal.
Yeah. So my diet was like, it's funny. Like, even when I went to like Buffalo or Pittsburgh, my diet, everybody's like, yo, how do you eat that stuff? And I'm like, yeah, it was ice cream. Like if I had a burger or French fries or whatever, I'm like, yeah, it's got carbs in it. It's just like the potatoes you're eating. I don't understand why it's just fried. Like, but if I had, that's the thing. So Coach Hicks, our strength coach, was always like, bigger nutritionist, and you got to have, your carbs, the healthy fats, and, your protein intake has to be the same amount of grams as your body weight, yada, yada. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good, cool. So to get the protein, like I have an eating disorder, so I can't eat like 5 times a day. I usually try to eat it in bulk so I can get all my calories in. So yeah, I'm gonna layer a couple Haagen-Dazs ice creams together because they have the same amount of protein as that protein shake that you're sipping. You know what I mean? So I wasn't like the justification was, I like having ice cream, but it has the same amount of protein. Or if I'm eating French fries, it still has 150 grams of carbs in it. It's just less healthy. And then the other side of that was like I was always like 2 or 3% body. Like the most I ever was maybe 5.7 or 6 when I was like going into my senior year after like strength training or whatever. But I was never above 6% body fat. So half the time I was eating that stuff just to like get bigger. Like I'm like, I need the fat, otherwise I'm gonna get like knocked out again, and I don't want Florida State to happen to me twice. So I kind of need the fat. So yeah, my diet was terrible. Like by normal person standards, pretty bad. But yeah, Kyle was right. I used to, I was there with the ice cream for protein, the burgers for fat, the steaks and Outback for fat. Yeah, man. And he was right there eating it with me, though. So he was a fat kid, too. So if you try to pretend like he wasn't eating it, like, nah, he was making the same orders as me. But yeah, I was eating like a 280-pound kid. Meanwhile, I was like 6 foot, 185, 190. But yeah, my diet it's getting better. But I was eating just about all the worst stuff you possibly can, just all in the name of gaining weight.
See, but it makes me feel good because, like, when you come to like visit and stuff up here in Syracuse, and you and I are like just watching some TV, hanging out, whatever, sitting on the couch, like both eating a bowl of ice cream, just like relaxing and stuff with like caramel, chocolate syrup, whatever that may be. You know, like I just look at you, you look at me, and you be like, bro, cheers. This is the carbs for the day. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna be like, I can feel relaxed knowing that when you and I hang out, we eat ice cream. Ain't nobody got to feel guilty about it. You know what I mean?
I am the worst influence when it comes to food. Like, if you're on any kind of diet, like, don't hang out with me because I'm gonna try to get you to go and order, you know, Cheesecake Factory. Like, if you're going, yeah, I'm gonna try to get you to put extra cheese, you know, on on your salad.
Or you're gonna make me go to that place that I went to last night, you know. And I'm telling you right now, I you know, I hope I'm wrong, Julian. I hope I'm wrong. But something is, you know, there's little rumbles going on. You know what I mean? Like I hope that I'm wrong. You know, my heart's like, you and I are gonna have to talk after this. Like that's how my body feels right now. It's like I'm not cool with you, but we'll talk about it later. Like I should have just had some late night ice cream and called it a day. But you know, I picture, I look forward to like taking that picture, that shot of you like leaning on the couch, like hanging out on the couch, me hanging out on the couch, and I'm just like, bro, cheers. And then it says, it's like hashtag carb diet. You know what I mean? Like, but it's, you know, one of those things where, I mean, I'm cool with, I don't have like stuff a ton. Like there's certain stuff that I will eat, but I could tell you with utter certainty that the side effect of what I ate yesterday should not be my heart genuinely, you know, like beating in this rhythm right now. You know, I feel like I'm Matthew McConaughey in like Wolf of Wall Street, where he's just banging his chest. He's like, like that's what I feel like's going on right now, and none of it feels right. But
no, yeah, you can't have that happen to you, man. Jeez,
you know?
Jeez.
But I got my 10K yesterday. You know, ain't nobody stopped me on that. But the funniest thing about it was like what I was eating, and then like jogging, my body like immediately was like. It's almost like I ate kryptonite and I tried to fly as Superman. Like, that's what it felt like I did last night. My body was like, oh, you messing with us now, huh? We can't just jog and that's enough? You got to try and, like, put us in quicksand, sloth us down a little bit and see if we can do it. So, man, I got there, but my body's like, you messed up, dude. That's how I feel. But I'm not going back there. Listen, it looked good, Julian. It tasted fantastic. And just per always, my body was like, I woke up this morning and it was like, I'm still not ready to talk to you. That's what my body did today.
Hey, sometimes you gotta treat yourself and just deal with the consequences. But it sounds like it was delicious, so that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, you're right, bro. You are a bad influence. I'm talking about heart palpitations, and you're like, bro, but it tastes good. but here with Julian Wake Up this morning on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, having some fun with my brother up here and having a good time, and always appreciating the extension of the family here, man. He's coming up to New York now, which means that like my Miami trip might be put on hold, but that's all right. You know, happy to have you coming up here and all that good stuff, Julian. And speaking about traveling around, Syracuse has Louisville on the schedule. Syracuse notoriously, since joining the ACC, struggles to play Louisville at Louisville. So what can you tell me as we look ahead at this game? We got a lot of stuff to unpack and get into today, but what are your thoughts on Syracuse going to Louisville, knowing that really no matter what the record is of the Cardinals, they always seem to make it not a great experience for Syracuse on the road?
Yeah, so I think this is, you know, just based on who Louisville is at this point. You know, they've suffered a lot of injuries. They've been hit by COVID in, you know, similar ways that Syracuse has, by meaning like the COVID contributing to the injuries that they have, like just not having that preseason kind of deals with a lot of injuries, just missing guys on defense, offense, losing guys out, you know, stuff like that. So this team's been decimated by, you know, not having as many guys, and it creates an opportunity for Syracuse. I think it's Louisville like 2 and 6, something like that. So I mean, I think this is Syracuse's most winnable game this year. And then there's news out there that Tutu Atwell, Louisville's best receiver, likely isn't going to play this week either. Like I said, that to me says for Syracuse, this is their best chance to get that second win of the year. But you're right. I mean, Louisville, historically has just been a bad matchup for Syracuse, really, since 2016. Obviously, Lamar Jackson terrorized defense for a little while. But even afterwards, with Juwan Pass as their QB, they've just spread Syracuse's defense out and just picked them apart. And then on the other side of that, they also caught Syracuse at the end of the year, like they are this year. And I think a lot of those teams, prior to 2016, a lot of those teams were kind of out of the season was over. There was no bowl game. And you kind of saw the shoddy tackling really show up in those Louisville games. And that's, I think, what's contributed to why Louisville has been so successful against Syracuse. This year, I think it may be a little bit different. I don't think that Louisville has the same amount of talent that they typically do on the offensive side of the ball. And then defensively, they're missing so many different guys. I think their coach was talking about finally getting their defensive line back to their original preseason starters. They're at about 95%, and then saying they're about 95% healthy, but still having issues at linebacker and in the secondary. So this Louisville team has a lot of the same problems as Syracuse in terms of injuries, but it's going to be up to Syracuse to take advantage of those opportunities. They're still working with a young quarterback and Jacoby Morgan, and it's just a matter of taking in the defense and making the right reads. I mean, if Syracuse comes out and they don't make mistakes, I think this is a game that they can win. But it's a young quarterback, young team, and you really never know how these kind of games go. We've got two teams that are really evenly matched, playing a lot of young guys.
Yeah, in Syracuse with Louisville since joining the ACC, the first time they played each other as ACC opponents was back in 2014. Syracuse faced off against Louisville at home, lost that game 28-6 inside of the Carrier Dome. In 2015, Syracuse went to Louisville, lost that game 41-17, and that was back on November 7th of 2015. Then in 2016, Syracuse played Louisville in their second game of the season, lost to them 62-28 at home in September of 2016. In 2017, Syracuse went to Louisville and lost that game 56-10. And then in 2018, Syracuse faced off against Louisville at home and defeated them 54-23. Their first win against Louisville inside of the ACC coming in 2018. And then in 2019, last season, they went to Louisville and lost the game 56-34, and then here we are in 2020. So not only do they lose when they're at Louisville, and have they lost all three games since being ACC opponents with Louisville, but they lose big. They lose by 20+. They give up 50. They give up 40. And so, we've seen that in every game. They've lost each of those three games. They've allowed 40+ points in each of those three games. They've lost by double digits in each of those three games. So I know this is a different year, and like you said, injuries and corona and different personnel and whatnot, but it's a genuine concern knowing that Louisville's had their number more often than not, especially when Louisville is playing at home in Kentucky, and it doesn't even seem to be close when these moments happen. And for whatever reason, whether their team, because this year the team is 2-6, but whatever record that team has at the time, speaking of Louisville, they always find a way to make it look like they're 8 and whatever or 7 and whatever when they're playing Syracuse. They seem to look better when they're playing the Orange, especially when they're playing at home, and that's a historical concern that Syracuse is going to have to jump over.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you see things like that, when you see a team constantly, on the winning side and usually by a large margin, consistently. A lot of times, a lot of things I've mentioned before, where at the end of the year they schedule each other around the same time. Syracuse usually already out of it, yada yada, not tackling, shoddy, whatever. But on top of that as well is once they've kind of figured out a game plan for Syracuse, like you get to know these teams. Like it's not like they're changing their scheme every year, right? You get to know these teams, and you can alter your game plan, just tweak it a bit so that they can't anticipate you, but you know where their weaknesses are. So Louisville, for a long time, has known how to attack Syracuse, and they've, I think, have had, or really been underrated in terms of the offensive talent they've had over the years, taking advantage of Syracuse's defense, and I thought they've Even outside of Lamar Jackson, like their receivers were always really talented. I think they got the best of secondaries I played on, and then a lot of secondaries afterwards. So a lot of that, and the major reason why we've seen that consistency from Louisville in terms of how they're able to dominate Syracuse is because they have the tape, and they've got just a key to success in terms of game planning them. So with this, and then the thing now is, okay, there's a new coordinator on defense for Syracuse, but install this year has been limited. And I'm sure at this point in the season they've gotten the majority of their defense and what they wanted to do. But when even with a new defense, if you're playing experienced guys, they understand those concepts too and know how to work it. So I mean, again, it's a situation where Louisville knows Syracuse well, and they're playing at home. So there's a lot of reasons why we've seen this. There's a lot of reasons why we have that historical context, and it definitely contributes to what Louisville can do and what we can anticipate can happen this Saturday.
Yeah, and this game coming up here under the lights Friday nights at Louisville. We'll have Friday, November 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time at Cardinal Stadium in Louisville, Kentucky. And you talked about injuries, Julian, on both sides. I mean, these teams haven't looked great. Louisville came into the season ranked in the top 25. Syracuse did not. But Louisville 1-6 in the conference. Syracuse 1-6 in the conference. Louisville 2-6 overall. Syracuse 1-7. Syracuse's only win coming against Georgia Tech this season in their first game in the reopening of the Dome on September 26th of 2020, an event that I will never forget, and I'm very proud and thankful I got to be a part of. On the other side for Louisville, Western Kentucky, their only non-conference game, and FSU are their 2 wins of the season. They had 4 losses in between that and 2 losses since. They lost to Virginia Tech and Virginia. This Louisville Cardinals team, I mean, for Syracuse fans to get excited about, the team to get excited about, they allowed 21 points to Western Kentucky, but in a loss against Miami, they allowed 47, 23 to Pitt, 46 to Georgia Tech, who Syracuse defeated. They played a very, very close game with Notre Dame. We'll get to that in a second, but we look at what they gave up. In the loss to Virginia Tech, 42 points. Virginia, 31 points. Georgia Tech, 46 points. Miami, 47 points. So their defense has been giving up a lot. However, they had a very uncharacteristic game, and what I mean by that is they haven't looked good this season despite being ranked. They really haven't looked great at all. I thought the game with Miami would be close, but they lost by 13 in that game. They did score 34, but ultimately with Louisville, as time went on, seemingly they got more and more exposed. But I want to circle that Notre Dame game, because Notre Dame, I told you on the phone, we were talking last night off the air, Notre Dame to me is better than I had anticipated or I had expected them to be, and Louisville played arguably their best game of the season that they lost. The 2 wins, obviously, those are wins, but take those out of it. Of all of their losses this season, their best loss that they had, if that's a thing, if you can go with me on it for a second, is that they lost to Notre Dame 12-7. They allowed Notre Dame's offense and Ian Book 12 points, that's it. And that was on the road in South Bend, Indiana. This isn't a game that was in Louisville, Kentucky. It wasn't at Cardinal Stadium. So they're on the road, and between the 2 teams, they don't even score 20 points. This game kind of makes Louisville an enigma to me because it doesn't make sense how great they played in that game, but then how poorly they've played really the rest of the season outside of their couple wins.
Yeah, so I mean, that boils down to, how a lot of teams, there's this coach speak saying, I don't know what you want to call it, but where teams play up to the number 1 team in the country. You always get their best, is a saying, right?
Yeah.
So when you're the number 1 team in the country, you get typically every team's best. And why is that? Because you're number 1. You're the top dog, and teams, because of it, they prepare more. They know that you're talented. They prepare harder. They see that. I don't know what it is about the scene at number 1, but they prepare harder. They know that they have to be at their best to compete. That's why we see Syracuse always play their best against Clemson. That's why we see most teams, even when they're not that good that year, when they're playing probably the best team on their schedule, I mean, they either get blown out or it's a really close game where they're really scrapping. And it's because they prepare harder, because they're that top team and they know that they got to come out and play. On the other side of that, typically that number 1 team, that better team, just isn't executing. They probably saw, Louisville or whoever else, and they're just like, okay, we can beat these guys with our eyes closed. And then, that's how games end up close, right? But if you really want to evaluate a team, if I was, still a player or something like that, and I saw, they played really well against this one team, or if I was a coach, really, they played really well against this one team, but they were, pretty bad or below average the rest of the season, I'm going to give them a below average and pretty bad grade and say, okay, this is who they really are, but this is what they can do. So you see the potential, but you understand what they are. So you game plan for what they are, but prepare for their potential, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. So it's a situation where when you see something like that, you have to understand, okay, these guys have ability. You see what they can do when they come out and play, but you also have to understand, okay, like, for example, here's a good example. When you're game planning quarterbacks, you as a defensive back or a linebacker, and you're game planning against a pass, right? You're going to say, when he throws interceptions, say throughout the year he's thrown 6 interceptions, and 4 of them have gone to linebackers. You say, he doesn't see linebackers. And that just means, that typically means over the middle, he's not great at reading cover 2, cover 3, whatever, right? And you say, okay, he's not reading linebackers great. But then he plays, Notre Dame, Clemson, whoever, and he throws for 400 yards, and he was killing it over the middle. It's like, okay, but he can, so you still want to game plan for that and be smart and say, hey, if we're not, sound here, he can really hurt us. But at the same time, keep in mind, if you're a linebacker, he doesn't see linebackers. So you want to, give yourself an opportunity. So that's how you game plan both. You say, okay, this is what he is, but prepare for what he can be. And, if you approach the game like that, you're typically you're successful more often than not. So, this Louisville team, I think that's the way you should prepare if you're Syracuse.
Yeah, and I like that. I like the fact that, you said something like that. You got to be prepared for everything, and you got to really understand kind of, the fact of what a team can do despite maybe what they've done in the last couple of weeks, what they're capable of, to know that certain thing, to pull those nuances out, to say, okay, there's a reason why they played Notre Dame so close. And there's a reason why, like you said, playing up to competition, but showing that they're capable. I mean, you could try to play up to competition and not do it. But in the case of Louisville, they had it in them. I'm sure other teams tried to play up to Notre Dame, and it just didn't look pretty at the end of it all. But in this case, they made it look good. In this case, it looked like it was something that almost worked out for Louisville. And it would have further confused the season, but we know that they're capable of doing some things out here. And I do want to take a look at, statistically, Malik Cunningham in the last game didn't have a touchdown, had an interception, 13 of 21, 161 yards. He was the leading rusher on the team. That's something to look at as well. We talked about, Louisville had some success at running the ball, but, Malik Cunningham had to do it himself in this game. 20 carries, 197 yards, 9.9 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. Jalen Mitchell, 7 carries, 76 yards, 10.9 yards per carry. None of that feels good for Syracuse, knowing how they go against the run. Now, have they done some better things? Yes. Have they, locked up a little bit better? Did I see some things against BC before the bye week? I did. But having a dual-threat quarterback, seemingly, no matter what defense Syracuse runs, has more often than not in the last decade been an issue. And seeing these guys, 2 of these guys, Cunningham and Mitchell, get at least 9 yards per carry on Louisville is like appetizing for them when they see Syracuse on film. So, Julian, let's go into that. Have you seen anything better against the run for Syracuse? And how concerned are you that Malik Cunningham is a running quarterback that put together over 300 yards cumulatively, passing and running? The fact that he can get 5 yards a carry, 9 yards a carry, that type of thing. And the fact that, Jalen Mitchell is obviously helping him out and is going over 10 yards a carry most recently and that was in a loss. That was, remind you folks, this was in a 14-point loss to Virginia. So, they looked beautiful in a loss. If this was fantasy football, you'd be like, oh man, my team lost, but I got like 97 points from them. So, what are your thoughts on knowing that Louisville can carry the rock and how dangerous that has been for Syracuse?
Yeah, so when it comes to Syracuse's defense, I mean, there really isn't much. They still aren't, very good at stopping the run. I don't mean to, put them down or anything, but they just haven't been good at it. I mean, the things they have tried this year, which you would naturally expect. You add more guys to the box. You try to squeeze the formation. You actually hope that offenses run more or tighter formations so that you can add more guys to the box, yada, yada. And they've done a marginal job. I think they've improved, in the last couple of weeks, but still not great. And I think that's just a matter of not knowing defense. And then Coach Babers has just flat out said, he's not proud of his defensive linemen and what they've done this year. So gap integrity, we've said that a ton of times. But when it comes to your quarterback, it's a little bit different, when it comes to run defense, because it's not just Syracuse. This is across football in general. The NFL, we're seeing Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, those kind of cats who can throw the ball and run. That's a modern kind of quarterback. It's really difficult for a defense to stop. And then on the other side of that, in college, we've seen that for years. A running quarterback who can throw the ball and also run is difficult to stop because it adds a sixth skill player. Obviously you have five with your, receivers and running backs, but he's essentially a sixth skill player that you have to account for, and that makes it that much more difficult as a defense to stop him, right? So, that's why Lamar Jackson was one of the greatest players ever. He was just such a skill player that no defense had the men to account for. You can't just throw 6-7 DBs out there, and you really can't stop the run. You could be, you get killed that way, right? So that's why it's so difficult to stop a quarterback when he's able to both throw and run, because it's hard to find a matchup to account for him. You sometimes try to stick a linebacker on him, and most linebackers, especially at the college level, just aren't, athletically gifted enough to keep up with guys like that. Sometimes teams try to shadow with the safety, but if you shadow with the safety, you're taking a defensive back away from your wide receivers or your running backs, the actual skill players, and then you put yourself at another disadvantage there. So it's really difficult for a defense to scheme when you got a quarterback with that skill set that can both run and throw, and especially when he can run well. So for Syracuse, Syracuse has been, particularly stressed by running quarterbacks. I don't know what that reason may be. Maybe it's the defense they run. Maybe they just really don't have the talent on defense. I don't know what it is, but they've been hit pretty hard by quarterbacks who can run, and that's the reason for it. It's really hard to stop a sixth skill player and find a way on defense to account for that with a spy or what kind of player you're going to use for it. So
yeah,
to watch them. So that's why, and I think that presents a unique challenge to Syracuse's defense this week when you have a quarterback who can run and throw like that.
Julian, speaking here with Julian Wiggum inside of our midweek Blitz weekly special that we bring to you inside of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora in the Cafe Kubal Studios every Wednesday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Playing DB for Syracuse, playing at corner for the Orange, bring me into the running quarterbacks that you went against. I mean, were you concerned in the sense of, how did you handle it? Did you spy? Did you see things maybe materializing and you're like, oh man, we're as you're backpedaling, you're like, we're going to miss this one? Can you bring me into how you saw it? And, how you kind of dealt with it, and if you ever tried to maybe, do more than your assignment, so to speak, or whatever that may be, or maybe call something out.
Yeah, so, the best example I can come up with is my sophomore year against Northwestern. We played Kane Coulter, if you can remember. He was the quarterback for Northwestern. He actually played some receiver, and then he ended up in the NFL at receiver. He was a really talented guy. He was 6 foot, 200 pounds. He was built really, he had a running back build to him, wide receiver skill set, and he could throw the ball. I think he ended up with 400 total yards, almost 500 total yards of offense by himself when he played us my sophomore. That would have been 2013. And we came in with a game plan where that year, I don't think I had started yet. So I was playing safety. I was mixed between corner and safety. And I can remember this one because at safety, we tried to spy him with a linebacker, and I can remember in practice that week, coaches were going back and forth between, do we want to try him with the line, maybe Cam that year, with Cam, or do we want to use Wiggum to stay on him? And, me, I was like, I'm just trying to play, so put me wherever. But it was, I just remember that conversation because he was so dynamic, and because he could run, he could throw, he could get out of the pocket, and he would keep his eyes downfield. So you had to, still stick with your guy because he would try to make the throw until there was just no room and he would take off. And it's so difficult for a coordinator. That's why I would never want to coach, because those kind of guys just, make you throw up the playbook. You don't know what to do after. Like, you could try to contain them with your defensive ends and keep them wide and just force them to throw the ball. But if he can throw, like Coulter could, he can still pick you apart. And it's difficult because, like I said, you try to spy, but you can't all the time because you don't want to sit in coverage all day. Then they can just run the football. It's hard to put DBs on them because then you're taking one guy out of coverage. And particularly for me, I was convinced he was going to win the Heisman after that game. I was like, this guy is amazing. I think he was having like an average career. This guy is, phenomenal. Yeah. But the defensive response to your answer was just WTF. Like, what do we do? Because there truly is like no real answer in football yet to the modern quarterback who can both throw the football efficiently and run. Because, for the same reasons I've said, if you try to contain him with defensive ends and not rush them all the way upfield, but just keep them on the outside so he stays in the pocket, some guys are quick enough to just hit that A or B gap, between the guard and center or the guard and tackle, and just outrun defensive ends back. Like, they can't trace back. They can beat you that way. Or they just sit there and they're like, all right, I got all day to look and figure out what you're doing. All right, just pick you apart. Like, that's what makes them so good and valuable, right? So, at the end of the day, the defense, you're just sitting there like, dog. That's why Alabama got killed by Johnny Manziel. It's why Russell Wilson is winning is about to get an MVP. It's why I think that plays into what I just lost the kid's name. The kid out of Kansas City. I think that's why he's such a great quarterback. He's got the ability to get outside of the pocket. Patrick Mahomes, and it left me as a defensive back feeling like, what do you do? And I know that's how coordinators feel, because it's like you can try all these different things, but at the end of the day, those guys are playmakers, and a great offense always beats great defense.
That coming from Julian Wiggum here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, inside of the midweek Blitz, giving you our thoughts on Syracuse football and so much more. Got a lot to get into, including the Western Michigan finish with former offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Syracuse, Tim Lester, in his fourth season back at his alma mater where he played quarterback and was there as a QB coach as well, that being Western Michigan. We'll discuss that. We'll make our picks, and we'll have some more thoughts on Syracuse right after this, where sports meets life on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. So stay here with us, and we'll look forward to being with you on the other side of this fast break in just a moment.
I'm George Townsend of Honda City with some good advice when buying a new car. The true cost of owning a new car is determined by the appraised value when you trade it. No vehicle appraises higher than a Honda. Next, look for low APRs and deep discounts. You also want low maintenance costs and great fuel economy. That's why my advice to you is to buy a new Honda. Looking pre-owned, visit our Honda Certified Used Car Center. Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard, Liverpool, or HondaCity-CNY.com.
This is Jim Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. I kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily. We bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand butter chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant is different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have at any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on WakeUpCallDT.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT, as well as on Facebook Live, where you're watching here with us on Facebook.com/LiveNowDT, all inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios. Cafe Kubal with locations all throughout Syracuse, New York, for you, and ever expanding on 3501 James Street, 208 North Townsend Street, 324 West Water Street, 401 South Salina Street, and inside of Golisano's Children's Hospital. The mobile cafe will come to you, to your neighborhood or place of business, and the local delivery in Onondaga County has no delivery fee, and they'll come right to your doorstep. So Cafe Kubal making it easy, giving you your favorites, trying something new, having some great stuff. Listen, I haven't tried anything at Cafe Kubal that I haven't gone, you know what? All right, now that's on the menu for me. Like, that's the next thing that I add to it. I got the chocolate chip cookie. I was like, all right, I'm rocking with the chocolate chip cookie from now until forever. And then the chocolate chip banana bread, jumped on that. Julian will tell you those are good carbs. And then, I get the pumpkin spice chai. And now I'm like, okay, do I want to ice it up? What do I want to do with it? Today I'm getting a hot one. Like 7 inches from the midday sun. Shout out Matchbox 20 and Rob Thomas. But that's where I'm at right now. Like, I have to get, after the show, some pumpkin spice chai. So you can get the DT special on my drink at any of the locations for mobile pickup, as well as just, walking up and ordering at any of those locations here in Syracuse, New York. And I implore you to do so, to try it. They do it. They put their pumpkin, their spices, all their stuff. They make it there in-house. And it tastes totally different than any chai I've ever had in my life. Pumpkin spice chai, DT special. I get mine with almond milk. You can get yours today, and make sure that you do that and warm up here on a cool central New York morning. With that being stated, Julian Wiggum and I are here inside of MonPosPopcorn.com's What's Poppin', giving you the midweek blitz and talking about Syracuse and some things going on, and the dual threat quarterback issue that Syracuse will face this weekend with Malik Cunningham. Julian, I want to go to the depth chart for Syracuse in this game. Syracuse outright, Jacobian Morgan is the starter. Rex Culpepper's been added back in here. Dylan Markowitz, first time we've seen Syracuse have a first, second, and third string, I think, without an or this season on the depth chart. And then Sean Tucker is first on it. Cooper Lutz has risen over Markenzie Pierre, so that is there. And, the Anthony Quealy and Ikeem Johnson, Taj Harris at wide receiver is expected. Aaron Hackett with Luke Benson behind him, that also as expected. So we're seeing that. And then the defensive side stayed pretty true to what we know. So really the big thing is Jacobian Morgan, outright starter there. What are your thoughts on Jacobian in this game? What would maybe be some words of advice? I know you played corner, but your job is to spy on the quarterback, read the quarterback, understand the quarterback, and stop the quarterback from getting down the field with his arms. So bring me into what you see from Jacobian through the eyes of a DB, because I think that's a really cool angle.
Yeah, so I think his biggest skill is his ability to escape the pocket. He's got that bit of mobility too. I don't think he's going to kill you, rushing, 10 carries, 115 yards. Like, he's not, going to hurt you that way. But he can escape the pocket. He keeps his eyes downfield to make the throw, right? So as a DB, a major emphasis, I'm sure, for Louisville is a concept called plaster, which just means to stick to your guy. If you're in zone and all of a sudden Jacobian, escapes the pocket, stick to your guy. He's not someone who's going to take off. And if he does, he's not a burner that our linebackers can't take down. So as a DB, you're thinking, all right, I gotta, have plaster on. If I'm ever in a zone, I gotta be thinking I might have to buy my guy and stick to him because Jacoby Morgan, he can extend plays. He's really good at, he's seeing the play and he keeps his eyes downfield to make the throw. And then on top of that, also the DB, going to get a little bit of hungry eyes because he's a young guy, and he'll take some risks. And, just from scouting him a few games, he typically only takes his risks against Taj Harris, right? This is just scouting report. If I was, trying to cover this guy, right? He typically takes his risks against Taj Harris. So if I'm the DB covering him, especially at corner, and I get, say either cover 3, cover 4, somewhere where I'm in like a depth, and especially if there's not many guys that are faster than Taj Harris. Like if it were me, I don't know if I'd be faster than him. So I would be thinking bail, some way that I can stay over top and even with him and kind of bait quarterback into thinking he's got a chance, right? I'll get excited when we got Blitz's call because I'm thinking, all right, he's probably going to take a shot here to, this guy. So just knowing that he likes to take his risks to Taj Harris. He's not going to, throw the hand over the eyes and, say F it and throw it to anybody else. He's going to go to Taj and he's going to take a risk. But it's just important to know because he's so good at escaping the pocket that you got to fix your guy, especially in zone coverage. So that's what I like about him. That's what makes him a good quarterback. It makes him mature as a young player. I don't think he's, I think he did a lot of good things. And so on the flip side of that, if I went from DB to offensive coordinator kind of deal, I would say to him, like, okay, you have to know if I'm a DB, that means, you have to know that. Like, you have to realize, okay, I can't take all of my risks to Taj Harris. Like, they're obviously going to shade him more because they know I like to go target him more often, right? I got to, make some reads some other guys. At the same time, if I'm always trying to escape the pocket, I want to be a little more efficient in my reads in terms of that, the first 3 seconds. When he's constantly escaping, sometimes he doesn't have to do that. He'll just move to be comfortable. That's what high school quarterbacks do. They do what's comfortable with them. So he'll just get out of his pocket, just to do it rather than, really reading that linebacker or really reading that safety and knowing where he's got to go with the ball, right? So if I'm coaching, I'm telling him, hey, you really want to focus on this here so you don't have to go outside of the pocket. The play isn't designed that way. You want to run the play as it's designed. So, and when you do that, that's when you become efficient. That's when you're, starting to look more like I'm not comparing them to these guys, but when you're efficient with how the play's supposed to go, you start to look more like a Peyton Manning. You start to look more like Tom Brady, Drew Brees, right? Because that's the efficiency. That's going where the ball is supposed to go, making a quick read. So that's what he wants to work towards. And, he's young. He's young. And I'm happy to see he's an outright quarterback. I mean, he's done a good job. And that's what he's working towards. And I think he's been doing well as a freshman quarterback. So that's what I would say. I mean, it's nothing critical of him, but, it's a part of being a young guy and getting experience and learning. So if I'm Coach Favors, I'm proud of him and, continuing to bring him along.
Yeah, and I think there's some good things. And worth noting here for Jacoby and Morgan this season, folks, he's attempted 37 passes, 26 completions, 70% completion percentage, 70.3%, moving the ball down the field, hitting a bunch of different receivers, and moving that offense. Arguably, I think the tempo of the offense was faster under him than DeVito, faster under him than Culpepper. He was getting out there, literally got to the ball, got everybody there, got to the line, hiked that ball, got it downfield, 4 yards here, 3 yards here, 30 yards there, 10 yards there. He seemed systematic. I like that. He seemed poised, like that. He seemed that, there was leadership there. And so there was a lot of good things that I took away from Jacobian's ability to get down the field, to be systematic, to take time off the clock with a pass here, a pass here, a pass here, a pass here, sideline, over the middle, sideline. To me, what he did and how he planned, and granted, maybe that's Dino saying, hey, we're going to bare bones this thing with Sterling Gilbert, the offensive coordinator, and we're just going to, do little things here and here. But that's how I saw Western Michigan win their game, right? It was just like completion after completion. It builds confidence. It makes you feel good. Your receivers trust in you. You trust in them, and you're just beating down that wall little by little by little by little. And I like it, Julian. I mean, I I see a lot of good in that, and obviously he completed the majority of those passes, and he's way above the other quarterbacks at Syracuse in his completion percentage this season.
Yeah, I mean, he's done a good job. And it's interesting because I think what helps him is, one, I don't think that he has, like, the broken clock that DeVito has at this point. He didn't get hit the way DeVito did last year, and I think that ended up hurting DeVito in terms of what kind of clock he actually has. So he was either A, trigger-happy, or B, would scramble for no reason. He often scrambled into pressure, right? And I don't think that Jacoby Morgan has that broken clock. Not yet, at least, right? So he's still, able to operate on his own time, and it gives the offense, a little bit of a sense more of a calm. Like, it just seems like it's flowing more because he's playing at his own flow. And this is another really cool thing I like about this cat. Like, I've noticed that a lot of football players, I wasn't like this now, but I really admired it. There were some guys who they didn't talk very much. They weren't like really loud, or they didn't have a personality that was really like just in your face, or very extravagant, yada yada, extroverted. But they were really calm, and in everything that they do, it kind of it flowed as well. So, and I see that with Jacoby. Like, I heard from Coach Davis that he's not a talkative guy, and you could see him like in his warm-ups and stuff. I was like, this cat, all right, he's pretty cool. I like this guy. Like, he's just like, he was chilling, and not to say his place out too relaxed, but he's kind of chilling in the pocket. Like, okay, drop back, make a throw. Oh crap, here's the blitz. Let me get outside. Oh, the ball's supposed to go outside. Let me put it there. And then, obviously being a young guy, he'll make some mistakes, but compared to the other guys we've seen, he doesn't take the sacks that they do, because I don't think he has a broken clock, and I think he's got a little bit more of a skill set. So his only issue is he's young, and he still has a couple bad habits. So it's just a matter of him breaking those bad habits and, continuing to play at his level of flow that allows him to be a good football player. I mean, coming in, I didn't really, have high expectations for him. I thought he threw the ball a little bit weird. And I was like, all right, he may be good, he may be not. Coach Davis doesn't seem to like him that much. But, as he keeps coming along, I'm like, all right, this guy might be okay. I like his style. So, when it comes to Jacoby Morgan, man, it's a matter of time with him. Maybe he's a quarterback in the future. I don't know. It's weird because Coach Davis doesn't really, like, gas this guy up at all. Like, his coach gives him, like, no real, like, public support yet. Like, he's constant. I don't know if that's just the way of treating a freshman and, keeping him humble and whatnot. Like, he's a guy you don't have to keep humble. He's gonna stay that way. He's not gonna all of a sudden just be like he's not one of those guys. You can just see it. So I don't know. Maybe that's his coach favorite style, but the kid, he's a good player, and I think he's good for Syracuse. He's been great for their offense, and with a line that's been struggling the way it has, having somebody back there that can move around a bit has been a major help to this offense and a major improvement. So he's got a great skill set. He's just young, and eventually things are gonna come together for him.
That comment from Julian Wiggum, speaking on Jacoby and Morgan, Syracuse's quarterback, as we move forward into the Friday Night Lights game in Louisville, Kentucky at Cardinal Stadium. And, Anthony Quealy and Ikeem Johnson, they've been stepping up. So if they do key in on that long ball to Taj Harris, which seems to be one of those things that Dino leans on, here and there and whatnot, and something that we definitely saw Tommy DeVito utilize, with Quealy stepping up and with Ikeem Johnson being a talent that I don't think they use enough, there's some good that's there. And, Nykeem kind of reminds me of Brisley a little bit, because, Brisley Esteem was small and scrappy and quick. And that's what Nykeem is. You get him the ball, you're like, I'm surprised. And I mean, maybe it's because the offense has been kind of vanilla, but, like, I'm surprised that Nykeem isn't getting, like, if I have a weapon like Nykeem or Briz or anything like that, I mean, if I talk to Lester and all them, I'd be like, you just needed to get Briz the ball. Like, you just give him the ball. It doesn't matter if you pitched it backwards 14 yards. He'd still get like a 40-yard gain, because that's who Briz was. And so, I mean, to me, with Nykeem, I'd be running like, some reverses. I'd be putting him in the backfield. I'd be putting him in a split back situation, in a check down situation. I would just be getting Nykeem the ball, because he's smaller, he's scrappy, he's hungry, he's good. He already knows how to read things quickly because he's the punt and kick returner. So I would think that if Syracuse really wants to win this game and maybe play pound for pound, and Malik Cunningham's going to have some big plays and big runs, then meet those with Nykeem Johnson and just get him the ball. Whether you got to pitch it to him, fake it to him, whatever you got to do, flea flicker, whatever it is that helps you out. I think that Nykeem is a weapon that Syracuse doesn't use enough.
Yeah, I agree. But I think his production, along with just about every other receiver's production, has suffered this year because of the lack of offensive line play and pass protection, which obviously affects the quarterback, which then affects receivers. I think that's a major reason why his production hasn't been where I think people would expect it to be. But on the other side of that, no, I think you're 100% right. I think that those, especially those kick returner, punt returner type of receivers are extremely valuable out of the slot position. It's really weird, looking at Coach Favors' offenses over the years. There's always been that 1-2 combo of that number one guy on the outside who's going to get the deep ball, big hands, Steve Ishmael, Alberto Tao, Jamal Custis types. But every year there was a Brisley Esteem. They had, what was the cat? Number 3. Just lost his name. Geez, where's my memory going? But they had another guy in the slot, Irvin Phillips. Was, another fantastic player out of the slot position. And those guys really helped this offense and made it efficient because they had such dancer's feet. They were impossible to guard when a linebacker was put on them. And college is not like the NFL where the NFL, they'll draft like talented players to play nickel. And in college, the nickel is like your third best corner or your third best safety, right? They're not, the best corners on the team. So when you're sticking a guy in that position, more often than not, you're creating a massive mismatch when you've got one of your kick returners on, a team's youngest or third best corner. So that used to be an advantage for Syracuse, and we just haven't seen it. And I don't know why, but you're right. I think getting Nykeem the ball in those kind of spots would be advantageous to Syracuse's offense. I don't know what goes into it. I'm not a coordinator. I was just a cat that played some corner for a little while. But, I think that this offense, especially Anthony Keeley as well, I think that those guys are really talented. And as once the communication between quarterback and receiver, gets to a more comfortable level. And I think a part of that with Dungy and those guys, they all knew each other. They came from one offense and meshed with each other to a new one, right? And I think that was a part of the chemistry. With the constant change of quarterback, there's no chemistry between wide receiver and quarterback either. So I think that kind of plays into it. But as that develops, I think that slot position improves its production. I think that Nykeem improves his production, and that's all that plays into it. It's just having those guys get comfortable with each other and understanding how to be on the same page.
That coming from Julian Wiggin, my co-host here every Wednesday for Hour 1, and some change here on the show, Midweek Blitz, speaking on Syracuse football and so much more. Julian, before we hop out of here, we got to make our picks, but I also want to go to that Western Michigan game and just your thoughts. I mean, Tim Lester, the former, and shout out to Oliver Haney, who's watching right now, and my man Seamus Shanley's watching too. Man, I heard you took some food from Julian. That ain't right, brother. I don't know why you're doing that. I wish you would have taken it from my house last night because it was like the same food Julian ordered, but I ordered it. I wish you would have taken it from me because my body is a lot of things right now, but it ain't happy. I'll tell you that much. So looking at that Western Michigan game, perfect segue, right? Bad food, scary. Seamus steals it, and here we are with Western Michigan. But that's my Vince Vaughn running stream of consciousness that I have. So, I think if Vince Vaughn and I ever talked, we'd be in an infinite loop. But this Western Michigan game, what they did, down by 10, here's the thing, and I told you this off the air, I believe, like that whole I believe that we will win, type of thing. And so Oliver Haney said, Julian, man, I have stories on this guy. Yo, Oliver, why aren't you on the show, bro? Like, what are you talking about?
Oliver's got the real stories.
Oh, Haney, you coming on the show next week? I'm gonna book that. So, yeah, Haney, I'm gonna DM you. You make sure that you pay attention to that message that you got coming your way. I'm ready, man. He offered that up, man. I didn't even ask for it. So that's good stuff. So I will tell you. See, like that's the balance. Bad food, great conversation. So in the Western Michigan game, they're down by 10. And I got amped, and I was like, man, let's see what Lester's got. And it was like 4 and change, 441. And I just had this feeling like he's going to make this interesting. Like, I believe in him. I've known him for a really long time, almost a decade. I respect him. You know, we have a very awesome bond, close relationship. And so they come back. They're systematically moving the ball down the field. They go to Eskridge by the end zone. He catches it. Crazy. It's going over top one guy. There's another guy behind him. Makes it happen. You'll hear Lester and I talk about it in a special that's coming up. Shout out, it's coming. So I'm leaving you little trail pieces here, folks. Something cool is coming up this week. But so that happens, and then they quarterback sneak it in, which for whatever reason with Syracuse, and maybe it'll be different with Jacobian, but the quarterback sneak doesn't work, even if they need like an eighth of a yard. And that's something that I expect teams to be able to do. So that's frustrating. But so they get it in. Then I'm like, wow, what if they miss the extra point? And then they missed it, Julian. And then they went for the onside kick. The kicker and the punter are running down the field together, crossing each other. Guy scoops it up, awesome, makes it happen. They get the ball back, and then they get it down the field. The fake snap, fade to the left side of the end zone to a wide open receiver. This thing had me going Christmas morning, jumping up and down, home alone. Nobody's in the house. I got the house to myself. I can eat what I want. Pizza for breakfast. That's how I felt watching that game. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I thought this game was the perfect combination of execution and incompetence, which creates the best kind of football, right? Yeah. So starting with the efficiency side of it, starting with the quarterback sneak into the end zone, like that was really well done because the way that it's not a typical quarterback sneak where you just line up and then hope your quarterback, falls forward in enough inches to get the first down, right? They actually schemed it in a way where they motion the tight end and then snap the ball immediately when the tight end's behind the quarterback and have him push right away. And, that extra bit of momentum is all the difference. Now, instead of a quarterback that's maybe 200 pounds trying to push past a 315-pound D tackle, you really got about 400 pounds pushing against those 300 between your center, quarterback, and that tight end. And it just makes it an incredibly efficient play, compared to, just trying to push it forward, right? So one, great job there. Then two, on the drive down, this is where it kind of gets into a little bit of incompetence on, the other side. They played straight up, like cover 3, cover 4. I'm like, where is the underneath coverage? Like, they had no timeouts. Why aren't you covering the sidelines? But, either A, coaching or the guys just couldn't figure it out. But there was no linebacker in the flat that ever decided to, maybe that running back's going to leak out. There was never a corner actually, called to be in the flat. There was no cover 2. That's on the coaches. So incompetence on the defense just allowed them to straight up go down the field when after they had, recovered the onside. So they just go down the field. And then finally, with the fake snap, you just get your corner just not paying attention. Like he sees one guy. It was actually really, this is a combination where they snuck a guy. They had him on the inside. He's kind of snuck out a little bit. And the original receiver, who was the number 1, he goes to the slot. So the corner follows him. And then they just sneak that the cat number 11 on the outside. He just goes and scores. Like no one watched. No one saw him. The safety's just hanging out, chilling, waiting for the strike. The corner's just watching the slot guy, waiting for the strike, and then boom, touchdown, the game's over. So, yeah, it's awesome. That's the part, when one team does everything right and the other team does everything wrong and in a little bit of a time frame, that's when you get your best moments. T-Mac scoring 13 in, 13 seconds. How the Falcons seem to lose every other week, right? It's just the team, some team figures it out, the other team falls apart. And that's what we saw, this past week with Western Michigan, man. So hats off to Tim Lester. I thought he called a great game. I thought he did a great job with his players, and, the outcome was in their favor. So, I love to see it. We love to see it, and, I'm happy for my guy.
Yeah, it was awesome. And a shout-out to Tim Lester and some cool stuff coming up here. Very much looking forward to that. So Julian Wiggum and I here in the Midweek Blitz. Julian is my co-host every Wednesday for Hour 1, speaking with you on college football and beyond. And very, very much appreciate his time here. Julian, before I let you go, we got to make a few picks this week for the college football world. So let's hop right into that schedule. Again, loving the fact that there's football all the time. There were 2 games last night. Buffalo is 2-0. They defeated Bowling Green. Kent State with Sean Lewis, the former offensive coordinator for Syracuse. He is doing his thing, defeated Akron, 69-35. And then we have games here on Wednesday night, including Western Michigan at Central Michigan. And before that game happens, Tim Lester is going to be doing a very special broadcast with me outside of our normal broadcast hours of 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You heard it here first. That's why you listen live, because you never know what I'm going to say. Heck, I don't even know what I'm going to say. And with this food in my stomach right now, I really don't know what I'm going to say. So Western Michigan at Central Michigan coming up tonight, and I have a really awesome thing to share with you all. With that being said, Thursday night games are happening. Friday night is Syracuse and Louisville and whatnot. So, Julian, Indiana at Ohio State. Indiana is 4-0. Stevie Scott, Central New York native, CBA, my alma mater, doing his thing, making it happen. And then on the other side of it, we have Ohio State, who's 3-0. Their game against Maryland got canceled. So, what are your thoughts on an undefeated matchup, 7-0 between the two? Does Indiana keep striking and make it happen? Or does Ohio State continue to be Ohio State?
Yeah, so we actually, talked about a few points that make for thinking about this game really interesting in how teams play up to, their opponent, right? And obviously, Indiana's going to play up to Ohio State, right? We're probably going to see some of their best football this year. But on the other side of that, Ohio State, knowing that Indiana's a good football team, they'll probably, typically bring their best. But I think the difference is in the quarterback, Justin Fields. He's just a game changer in a way that I don't think Indiana has that kind of guy yet. And then we talked about how a mobile quarterback is just so difficult to defend. Especially one that can throw the football so efficiently as he can, right? So, no matter what Indiana throws at him, he's probably going to find a way, to get the ball out or run the football and make a play. And, you have to go with the team that has those types of players. So I got to go with Ohio State this week. I love Indiana. I think they're a good football team. I think they're going to end up, highly ranked, top 10 team maybe by the end of the year. But Ohio State, I think, is just on another level, and it's because of Justin Fields and what he can do on the field. So got to go with Justin Fields and Ohio State this week.
I'm riding the hand that I've been riding all the way through. I'm going with Indiana. This is considered an upset, but it's 2 top 10 teams. I know Ohio State's got it. I know that they're strong. I know they got a lot going for them. I know that they are a dangerous team to play. They're a team that, the last few years here especially could go undefeated, and nobody would be surprised. But I'm going to go with Indiana. I'm going to lean on Indiana. Have faith, as I have had all season, on my guy Tom Allen, who celebrates with his team the right way. Reminds me of Shafe. And I'm just really excited about it. So, Indiana, I'm riding with you. I'm riding with Stevie. There's a little emotion in this. I'm going to tell there's a lot of emotion coming to you in this pick. But I think both of these teams are good. I hope it comes down to the wire. I hope it's 40-something, and we get to see at least 2 overtimes. So, I'm going to go with Indiana. It's on Fox at noon Eastern Time. You know that I will be watching that for sure. The sad game, Julian, because we know, what we're going to say here. But I would imagine this game used to be the fight for the Atlantic Division of the ACC, but not right now, not the last couple seasons. Clemson at Florida State. This used to be a marquee game, and it hasn't felt like that in a while. What are your thoughts on Clemson with, the fact that, the Trevor Lawrence saga is going on, and, they just came off of a loss to Notre Dame in a really good game, but here we are at Florida State. Any chance that they trip, struggle, or is this just going to be a romper like they're playing the Citadel?
No, they should smash Florida State, to be completely honest. They're incredibly talented. The reason I picked Notre Dame to win, against Clemson last week was strictly because I thought, okay, they got a backup QB. He's probably not good. I can't pronounce his name. It's way too long. But
DJ Uiagalelei. That's all you got to know.
Yeah, exactly.
Try it. I want say it with me, Joe. Let's do it together. Uiagalelei.
That's exactly how it sounds.
Julian's like chocolate chip, mint chip ice cream. That's what I got.
Exactly.
There you go.
With hella calories. Yeah, but that's the thing. I thought Notre Dame would win that game just because they had a backup quarterback in, and I didn't think that he'd be ready to play up to the level that Trevor Lawrence typically does, right? But then it ended up being that, Notre Dame is just a great team and Clemson just fell short. But, Yuga, whatever his name is, played a hell of a game. Like he was productive, protected the football, did what he was supposed to do. So, and it seems like he's going to be consistent with that. Even the game before, he's done pretty well. So, my expectation is that Clemson doesn't really lose a step with this cat in. They're one of those teams that just reloads at this point, right? And meanwhile, Florida State has just completely fallen apart. They felt they were starting to trend downward by the time that they lost their. My memory today is just horrible. By the time they lost their old coach, can't remember his name, but then they brought in the new guy from USF that ended up not being great.
You're talking about when they went from Jimbo and then eventually to Willie Taggart.
When they had Jimbo Fisher, they were already trending downward. Then they brought in the cat from USF, who I think was a bad hire in the first place. Their culture was already bad. He was not a respectable coach because he didn't come from a winning pedigree. So culture continued to fall apart. And now they're still struggling because they've changed their coaches so many different times. They're trying to rebuild the culture. Meanwhile, rebuild a scheme that fits them, and they just become a bad football team. So, all that combined, that's how you end up 2-6 like Florida State is. And so I expect Clemson to win this pretty handily. And, I can only hope that Florida State figures it out soon.
Yeah, I'm going to say Clemson. I mean, obviously, it's just, what they've been able to do, the game that they played up against Notre Dame, how they've been able to play, and the fact that they have backup quarterbacks that are more than ready to go in there and do the thing and get it done. I know that they don't look perfect, but Jeepers Christmas. I mean, with Uiagalelei and then, going to Alabama with Tua Tagovailoa, I mean, what he was able to do when he was there. And then, look at Tua's brother in Maryland, just incredible. Two more games here, Julian. Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. Let's go to that one. Actually, I have three total, but Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. Oklahoma State almost lost to Tulsa, who's now ranked in the nation's top 25. I'm not bought into Oklahoma State right now. They're in the top 15 at the moment. They're at Oklahoma. What do you think?
Yeah, so it's a road game for Oklahoma State. I'm going to go with the road team here. I think because the home team here in Oklahoma. Strictly because I think they're both evenly matched. Oklahoma's lost this year, and close game to Texas, and I think that just because these teams are so even, I'm really just going to stick with the home team here and go with Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm going with Oklahoma just because, like I said, I'm not sold on OK State. I don't see it. I don't see the top 15 designation, so I'm going to go with Oklahoma in this matchup, and Oklahoma State's on the road. Last one before we get into Syracuse. Appalachian State, who is 6-1 in the Sun Belt and plays spoiler, Coastal Carolina, who's ranked in the nation's top 15, and they're 7-0. Who wins this one?
Yeah, so I like Coastal here. App State's a good football team. 6-1, they're playing well. But Coastal, as an undefeated team, I think I think the line was actually pretty large. Yeah, it's +5. It's supposed to be a 5-point game. So I like Coastal Carolina here, man. They're a talented football team, undefeated for a reason. Yeah, I see no reason to pick against them. I mean, App State, while they are a good football team, Coastal's been playing well on offense, so I'm going to stick with Coastal this week.
Yeah, I like Coastal Carolina. Former Syracuse player Austin Wilson transferred there at quarterback a few years back. I'm going to go with Coastal Carolina, but I'm super nervous about that game against App State because App State is just, it's perfect that their name is App State because you talk about those, something being appetizing. This game is, and they get hungry all the time when they can play spoiler to literally anybody. Syracuse at Louisville, final one, Julian. What do you got?
Yeah, so Syracuse has played the way this year that does not allow me to pick them ever again. So that being said, I'm going with Louisville this week. For a number of reasons. We talked about how Louisville seems to always catch them at the end of the year. They seem to have a game plan fit just for Syracuse that makes them successful. Despite losing the top receiver, I still think that Louisville is a superior football team. They're at home. At this point, I just don't trust Syracuse with the game. So until they prove me otherwise, I got to pick against them. I'm going with Louisville this week.
Yeah, I got to do the same thing, man. I told you history for a reason. The only three games that they've played as opponents in the ACC where Syracuse has been on the road at Louisville, those three road games inside of ACC play have never gone in Syracuse's favor. at Cardinal Stadium, and they've allowed 40-plus points each time, and they've lost by double digits each time. So I know it's different teams, but that's the thing. It's different teams, yet they still lose by almost the same. And I just don't see it. Since they become ACC foes, Syracuse only defeated Louisville once. That was in the Dome. Outside of that, it's been all Louisville since 2014. So I'm going to go Louisville in this game. And, the fact that they can run the ball and have a dual-threat quarterback further states the point that I think that this could go more in the direction of history repeating itself than it would with Syracuse flipping this one. I see like a 45-21 type of game, and that's just the reality of how Syracuse plays there and what's going on, and the fact that they're playing a team that can move the ball and run the ball, and is probably going to look more prolific on offense against Syracuse than they have against other people. So you don't want to be somebody else's highlight reel, but unfortunately that's what's happened to Syracuse this year, and it's tough. And I'd want to pick them in this game because it's 2-6 versus 1-7, but I just can't justify it with what I know about Louisville, especially at Louisville. With that being said, Julian Wiggum, I bid you adieu, my brother, here on the show, Midweek Blitz, every Wednesday. I appreciate you so much putting in some OT this morning as we typically do, and I appreciate that. I'm excited for your upcoming endeavors and, the next chapter of your life. You have my support and my hopes and my well wishes with everything, and I'm with you every step of the way, walking in stride, so just know that.
Hey, man, I appreciate that, Dan. I appreciate having you on the show. This is always fun. Good to always talk ball. Always some, fun conversation. So thank you for having me, man. And, I'll catch you next Wednesday.
All right, brother. Take care.
Yes, sir.
See you later. That coming from Julian Wiggum here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. We're going to take a quick step aside for a fast break. When we come back, we will flip into the Fantasy Football Power Hour. Appreciate your patience this morning as we get set to bring on Mr. Mike Sofka in the Fantasy Football Power Hour here where sports meets life.
Cafe Cabal Mobile Cafe brings the cafe experience to you. We'll roll out to your neighborhood or office, ready to serve our locally crafted espresso bar to our loyal patrons. Inquire at cafecubal.com. Cafe Cabal, coffee for the soul.
Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, located on 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, is home to over 40 flavors with more than 200 flavors in their total wheelhouse. Sky's the limit for this sweet and savory Central New York company. Keep it local at your parties, fundraisers, wedding showers, baby showers, and more by calling 315-450-MA-PA. That's 315-450-6272 for popcorn bars with custom flavors and colors at your upcoming event. Make sure to visit them on 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York. And for more information, go to maandpazsnacks.com. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. How corny are you? The Millhouse Market, located on 3790 New York 13 in Pulaski, New York, is worth the drive every time. Make sure you make your way out there, but before you do that, download their app at the Apple app or Google Play Store, and you'll have their entire menu at your fingertips with contactless pay as you go through the menu of their sandwiches named after the families that helped to settle what is today's Pulaski, connecting them even deeper and ingraining them in the community and respecting where they came from and where they are hoping to go, always onward and upward in Pulaski at the Millhouse Market and beyond. And you get everything there from the sandwiches to the brick oven pizzas to the homemade breads and desserts, the quinoa bowls, the rice bowls, the salads, and so much more. And you have contactless pay, like I said, on the app, and you'll be able to do that and pick up your food right at the drive-up window without even having to get out of the car. They make it so easy, keep us safe, and do everything that they can do to make our taste buds dance and always be happy for the drive. So you might see a little bit of snow on the ground, but that's not going to stop me. Shouldn't stop you. Millhouse Market, 3790 New York 13 in Pulaski, New York. First time I went up there to meet with them, it was a snowstorm, and I am so happy that I went in there, and will always be happy with the fact that my dad brought me out there and you know, created this this connection, this opportunity to connect with such a great place. So shout out to the Millhouse Market, where families go and where they care about our families here in the community and beyond. So thank you to the Millhouse Market for all that you do. With that being said, we're going to end this video and start a new one, so follow us on to the next one for fantasy football.